Welcome to SAM Conversation, an online program of South Asia Monitor. I'm Col Anil Bhat. Our subject today is Beijing's suspected biowarfare as research continues with laboratories set up in Pakistan. It is our pleasure to welcome Mr. Jayadev Ranade. Needs no introduction. And Major General Dhruv Katoch, who also needs no introduction, except that it's a pleasure to have him as my old course mate. Gentlemen, the book which I recently wrote, which is recently out, which I wrote on China, Bloodies Bulletless Borders. It was ending in 2019 December under the title Managing Bulletless Borders. And just when I was about to hand over the manuscript to the publisher, the first news came about COVID-19. I was very clear, you can call it COVID or any other way, that this is the result of experimenting in biological warfare by the PLA. I had no doubts, so I decided that this book now needs another chapter. And the chapter I added was, after the Wuhan and Mamallapuram summits, the Wuhan virus. While I was writing that, whatever happened in May, June 2020 made me add yet another chapter, the last one. However, in this chapter, I carried out a fair amount of research on how the Wuhan Institute of Virology became the source to contaminate the whole world, literally the whole world. The world exists of 97 countries. What was contaminated was those 97 countries plus another, totally 110 countries and territories contaminated by that leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And about maybe up to a month later, there was no trace of anyone working in that laboratory. As of maybe 2 weeks ago, there's one network which put out a program, a TV news network which put out a program stating that this facility, China has set up laboratories in Pakistan to research biological weapons for biological warfare. And in that chapter which I wrote, the last 2 pages of that covered exactly this. What would you like to say, Jayadev, to begin with?
I'm on a video. Can you repeat that?
Yes. I ended by saying that, that even in the chapter which I added on the Wuhan virus, as I've stated, its last 2 pages, I covered it's the setting up of laboratories in Pakistan with the involvement of the PLA and the involvement of Wuhan Institute of Virology also. Anything you'd like to say, comment on this?
Well, it's there are reports about them having signed an MOU or about to sign an MOU for setting up a series of such laboratories in Pakistan, Institute of Virology and Pakistani institutes for studying germ warfare and biowarfare. This is not something that only China is doing. Other countries have also done it and set up biolabs elsewhere, I guess equally to protect their own people. But in the case of the Chinese doing it, I think there are 2 points that we need to keep in mind while we explore this further. One is that the Chinese have already got fairly advanced laboratories on biowarfare. And the second is their close nexus with Pakistan, where they have helped it become a nuclear state, nuclear power, and where they already have very close army to army and intelligence contacts. So what exactly are they doing with a biowarfare plant in Pakistan when they have a convergence of interest in keeping India on the back foot is something I think that should concern us quite a lot. And I'm sure it will.
Thank you, Jayadev. Dhruv, your take, please.
Thank you, Anil. You see, while I agree totally with Mr. Jayadev Ranade, I would like to offer a slightly different opinion which can go along with it. Now, you see, there is absolutely no doubts in my mind that both China and Pakistan will collaborate together. They've already collaborated in the nuclear field, and they could very well be doing it in the biological and chemical space also. But the question really is that the article which has spoken about this has spoken about anthrax, some experiments being carried out in anthrax. But the individuals really will not know what exactly has been planned if it has been planned at the military to military level. I don't think anything of that will really leak out. However, you see, there is a slight difference here when we talk of biological weapons and when we talk of nuclear weapons. The nuclear weapons technology cannot proliferate the way a biological weapon can be used. And I think there would be some, at least I'll be surprised if within China, there is, or within the Chinese military establishment, if there is not adequate concern as to what Pakistan may do with such biological weapons. Unlike a nuclear weapon, if a small quantum of a virus is taken out by somebody, that could be used against the Chinese themselves. Now, we have seen in the last few months itself, in fact, just a few days ago, there was an attack on the Confucius Institute in Karachi University, where 3 Chinese lost their lives, including the director of the institute. Now, a few months earlier, we had this attack where 13 people died, 9 of which were Chinese personnel in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. That was in a bomb which was reportedly planted in a bus. Now, there is a direct attempt by people within Pakistan or certain groups within Pakistan to target the Chinese. Whether we talk of the Baloch nationalists or we talk about the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, or it could be some other groups. Now, having said this, will China still be comfortable in carrying out such research which could be used against it? Because if we go back to, Anil, your opening statement on the Wuhan virus, now that virus leaked out from a very high secure laboratory. Regardless of what the Chinese may say, that it came from bats or it came from elsewhere, the point is it came out from the laboratory. The only question which we are not aware of is whether it was deliberate or it was accidental. Now, in Pakistan, I'm not sure if a laboratory can be that highly guarded the way a nuclear facility is guarded, because in the case of the Wuhan virus, it may have come out with the scientist in his coat pocket. All that we are talking about is taking out a small vial of this, and then that could be used anywhere. Most specifically, I think it can be used against the Chinese. So whether the Chinese are still going to go ahead with doing something like this, well, that is a call which I think they have to take. For India, I'm totally with Mr. Ranade, Mr. Jayadev Ranade, totally with him. It is a cause of concern for us. Not that China requires Pakistan's help, but the point is we have a very long land border with Pakistan, and that collaboration may actually threaten our entire land border as far as this virus is concerned. The only thing which I think which people have to remember when we look at viruses is viruses do not travel based on borders. You see, for them there are no borders, and if a virus is leaked out from point A, well, it can go anywhere. So if Pakistan and China have to carry out a trial of such viruses to be used against India, I presume they will first try to make an antidote to that virus so that their population is not impacted. But this is a game, I think, which we will have to study very deeply. And while India is a signatory to the Chemical and Biological Weapons Treaty, I'm not sure whether I mean, I think the time has also come now for India to actually discuss these matters openly, if not actually participate in them, and see what we can do to prevent any hostile country from using such weapons against us. Anil.
Thank you, Dhruv. Some sharp observations there, and as did Jayadev bring out. I can only say, well, whatever is going on between the NATO countries and Ukraine or Russia is really of very little concern to us. But when China sets up, such facilities in Pakistan, it is of just as you both brought out. What is it? What is it that what more cooperation can they have? They already have it in all fields which cover Army, Navy, Air Force, nuclear, intelligence, common interest against in damaging India. This adds I think it's something which we must take very, very grave note of, and factor into our preparations, our preparedness, our status, whatever. Anything further, Jayadev? Briefly,
I just like to refine this line of discussion that we have by firstly making the observation that China is not really rational, whereas some of its actions are concerned. So when we question as to why they're doing it, I think we need to keep that in mind. Why, for example, does a power that is rising, that is already so large, that already has such an economy, why does it have to be aggressive towards a neighbor who has generally been peaceful all the time? It defies rationalism and it defies logic, and yet they are. So when we are looking at this, we need to keep, I think, that in mind. The second is that many larger countries, when they're carrying out biowarfare or biological experiments, they like to do it in other countries, lesser developed, where they feel there will be less of a public outcry, and they can carry out their experiments, in a, shall I say, in a more quieter fashion, or in a remote area, and probably try and contain it if it's a small-scale experiment, which is probably would be the attempt here. And the third, I would just draw your attention to the fact that the Chinese have also been working on genetically modified viruses and biowarfare attacks. Now, then in that case, if this is what is being attempted here, then it makes sense, because genetically, or at least as a race, if I may use a term in a broader sense, it makes more sense to try it there so that they can target us. So these are just the points that I think we need to start considering. And at the bottom would be the fact that they are not a rational actor.
Thank you, Jayadev, for again adding what you did. Dhruv, any other point you have before we wind up?
Yes, I'll just give some very. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'll just give some very brief observations. You see, I think the time has come now for. I think India also must be carrying out certain experiments, though not on biological warfare. But we have, we have got a very thriving program. That was one of the reasons why we could make the antivirus for the for the COVID vaccine for the COVID virus. We could make that vaccine in such a short time. I think that was an outstanding piece of work, which certainly shows Indian ability towards on that line. But the larger point which Mr. Ranade stated, I think that is very correct. So you see now today in Ukraine, the biolabs which they have got there, which America is denying, but which Russia has got the proof, they have been done in connivance with the Americans. So the Americans are really working on it. Those labs are there, they have been funded, and the American scientists are there. Now the same thing happened in Wuhan. So I think this is a cause of great concern to us as to what exactly is China attempting to do. China is not a rational actor, so I think they will sort of take the risk factor into account that okay, there'll be rogue elements within Pakistan because it is a highly radicalized country, and some of them may actually use it against the Chinese. But I think they would have factored that into their calculation because China, unlike the Western countries, is prepared to lose its citizens. And I think the same thing is as far as Pakistan is concerned. If the Pakistan military has gone into those trials, I think they are quite prepared to accept that their citizens will be used as guinea pigs. So this, when we look into the irrationality content of it, it is totally plausible. And I think we need to be very, very concerned. The only good news in the whole thing is that our capacity and capability in this regard, while it is being used for beneficial purposes, is really on top of that. I think, we need to get involved into this much more seriously, especially into looking into how a biological warfare could be used by both China and Pakistan against India. Anil.
You spot on, Dhruv. We should recall what happened in Wuhan, or how the Chinese treated their own citizens in Wuhan. They locked them up, and just the first scientist who came out with who first spoke about this virus. He was harassed. He was really harassed, and eventually they said he died of COVID. One wonders whether he died of COVID or other reasons. But the fact remains that anyone and everyone who was involved in the Wuhan Institute of Virology was missing. And while in Beijing and Shanghai, in the initial months, it was surprising. It was surprising to hear that there's hardly any effect of the virus in these two major cities. Whereas now, since very recently, both these cities are facing particularly Shanghai is facing a very, very great attack. And that also raises apprehensions. We already had 3 or 4 versions. One wonders how many more there may be. It's not something, it's not something pleasant to think about, but it's something we should be prepared for. Any very brief comment on this by Jayadev, you, Dhruv, very briefly?
No, I think I've already stated what I had to state.
I agree with you. I think we have to be very, very careful. We have to be cautious. And I'm sure that, with these reports, we are certainly going to probe and look into it very carefully. But it is a double-edged weapon, as everyone here has pointed out.
Yes.
And China also needs to be worried. But I have no doubt that this laboratory will be manned and controlled by the Chinese, even if it is in Pakistan.
Oh yes.
Yes.
It is. And I think we can end on one great consolation, that we gave the world and ourselves, I think, a great surprise with, as mentioned, the vaccines that we came out with.
Yeah.
And may we have a reasonable future as far as this virus is concerned. I wouldn't like to be, one hopes and prays that we don't have to face any more versions of it. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for a very stimulating, stimulating outputs on this sensitive subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All the best. Bye, Dhruv.
Bye.